The Detroit Fire Department Station 19 sat on the corner of Grand River Avenue, its red brick facade weathered by decades of smoke and winter snow. Inside, Captain Miles Carter wiped down his helmet, the number 19 painted in yellow, reflecting the fluorescent lights above. At 38, Miles carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who'd walked through fire, literally, and came out stronger. "Cap, you heading out soon?" Jenkins called from across the apparatus floor, coiling a hose with practiced ease. Miles glanced at the clock. 11:47 p.m. His shift ended at midnight. "Yeah, gotta pick up Maya from Mrs. Henderson's. School project ran late." "That girl's gonna be valedictorian, mark my words," Jenkins grinned. Miles smiled, the kind that reached his eyes. Maya was 7, brilliant, and the reason he woke up every morning. Since her mother left when she was 2, couldn't handle the long shifts, the constant worry, it had been just the two of them. His daughter had his late mother's eyes and a heart bigger than the city itself. The alarm bells stayed silent, rare for a Friday night in Detroit, where poverty and desperation often sparked into literal flames. Miles grabbed his jacket, navy blue with the DFD patch on the shoulder, and headed to his pickup truck, a 2015 Ford F-150 with a car seat in the back and a "My daughter is an honor student" bumper sticker. The drive to Mrs. Henderson's took 12 minutes. The neighborhood transitioned from industrial to residential, Victorian homes standing defiant against time. Mrs. Henderson, a retired schoolteacher who'd known Miles since he was Maya's age, opened the door before he knocked. "She's a treasure, Miles," she whispered, leading him to the living room where Maya sat surrounded by poster board and colored markers. Her science project about photosynthesis spread before her. "Daddy!" Maya jumped up, her braids bouncing. She wore her favorite purple hoodie, the one with the firefly on the front. "Hey, Firefly, ready to go?" She nodded enthusiastically, already packing her materials. Miles thanked Mrs. Henderson, pressing 2 20s into her hand despite her protests, and they walked to the truck. "How was your shift?" Maya asked, buckling herself in with the independence she insisted on. "Quiet. Sometimes that's a blessing." "Did you save anyone?" Miles pulled out of the driveway, heading toward their apartment on the east side. "Not tonight, baby, but we're always ready." The streets were slick with early November rain, neon signs from late-night diners and liquor stores reflecting in puddles. Detroit at midnight was a city of contrasts, hope and hardship existing on the same block. Miles had grown up here, knew every corner, every story etched into the concrete. "Daddy, why do you do it?" Maya asked suddenly, her voice small. "Do what, Firefly?" "Run into fire when everyone else runs out." Miles was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Because someone has to. And because when I come home to you, I want you to know your daddy stood up when people needed him." Maya nodded, satisfied. They turned onto Gratiot Avenue, just 3 blocks from home. That's when they saw it. The alley was barely visible from the street, just a gap between a closed bodega and an abandoned warehouse, the kind of forgotten space where broken streetlights created pockets of shadow. But Maya saw it first. "Daddy, stop!" Miles hit the brakes instinctively, scanning for danger. "What's wrong?" "There." Her small finger pointed toward the alley, trembling. In the dim glow of a distant security light, Miles saw movement. His firefighter training kicked in. Assess the situation, identify the threat, act. 3 figures stood over a 4th person on the ground. Even from 30 feet away, he could hear muffled cries. "Stay in the truck, lock the doors." His voice was steel. "Daddy..." "Maya, lock the doors." He stepped out into the cold November air, adrenaline sharpening his senses. The rain had stopped, leaving everything damp and glistening. As he approached, the scene became clearer, more sickening. A woman, mid-30s, white with blonde hair matted against her face, lay crumpled against the brick wall. Her blouse was torn, her professional skirt hiked up. She wasn't moving much anymore, just shallow, desperate attempts to push away. 3 men surrounded her. The tallest wore a Red Wings jacket, probably early 20s, with the swagger of someone who'd never been told no. The other 2 flanked him, one in a black hoodie, the other in a leather jacket that had seen better days. "Hey!" Miles's voice echoed off the brick walls, commanding and clear. All 3 turned. The woman's head lifted slightly, hope flickering in her eyes. "Walk away, man," Red Wings said, his voice casual, dismissive. "This ain't your business." Miles stepped closer, his 6-foot frame casting a long shadow. "I'm making it my business." Black Hoodie laughed, a sound without humor. You really want to do this? 3 against 1, brother. That word, brother, meant to create solidarity, to suggest they were on the same side against some invisible enemy. It made Miles's blood boil. Let her go. Now. Red Wings pulled something from his pocket. A knife, 4 inches of steel catching the light. Last chance, turn around. Miles didn't move. 20 years of training, of carrying people from burning buildings, of keeping calm when everything around him screamed chaos. It all coalesced into absolute certainty. Behind him, in the truck, Maya was watching. His firefly, his reason for everything. Please, the woman's voice was barely a whisper. Please help me. That was enough. Miles moved first. Years of hauling equipment, climbing ladders, and dragging victims from smoke-filled rooms had built a body that was functional strength. Not gym muscles, but the kind of power that came from purpose. He closed the distance in 3 strides. Red Wings swung the knife in a wide arc, telegraphing his inexperience. Miles caught the wrist mid-swing, twisted it sharply, and heard the satisfying clatter of steel hitting pavement. An elbow to the solar plexus, and Red Wings doubled over, gasping. Black Hoodie charged from the left. Miles pivoted, using the momentum against him, a hip throw that sent him crashing into a pile of wooden pallets. The sound was brutal, splintering wood and groaning metal. Leather Jacket was smarter or more scared. He hesitated. Run, Miles growled. He ran. But Red Wings wasn't done. He came up swinging, rage overriding pain. A punch caught Miles in the ribs, solid but not enough. Miles returned with a straight right that connected with jaw, the impact reverberating up his arm. Red Wings went down hard. Black Hoodie was trying to stand, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. Miles grabbed him by the collar, pulled him close. You ever touch a woman like that again, and I will find you, understand? A terrified nod. Miles released him, and he stumbled away, half running, half falling down the alley. Red Wings crawled after him, leaving his knife behind. Silence. Miles turned to the woman. She'd pulled herself into a sitting position, arms wrapped around her knees, shaking. He approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. Ma'am, are you hurt? Can you tell me your name? She looked up at him, tears cutting clean tracks through dirt and mascara. Sarah. Sarah Chen. Sarah, I'm Captain Miles Carter with the Detroit Fire Department. You're safe now. I'm going to call 911, okay? She nodded, unable to speak. Miles pulled out his phone, but before he could dial, Maya's voice cut through the night. Daddy! She was standing at the mouth of the alley, having disobeyed his order to stay in the truck. Her face was pale, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. Baby, I told you. Is she okay? Maya walked forward, small but brave. She looked at Sarah with the kind of pure concern that only children possess. Are you okay, miss? Sarah Chen, assistant district attorney for Wayne County, looked at this 7-year-old girl with braids and a purple hoodie, and something broke inside her. She started sobbing, not from fear, but from the overwhelming relief of being seen, of being saved, of being human again. Maya sat down next to her without hesitation, taking her hand. My daddy's a hero, she said simply. You're safe now. The paramedics arrived first, 2 EMTs from Detroit Medical Center, familiar faces from mutual aid calls. They knew Miles, respected him. While they checked Sarah's vitals, Miles gave his statement to the responding officers. 2 patrol cops, young but competent. You engaged 3 suspects physically, the older officer asked, scribbling in his notepad. They were assaulting her. I intervened. Did they have weapons? Miles pointed to the knife still lying where it fell. The tall one. I disarmed him. The officer bagged it as evidence. You know we'll need a full statement downtown. Tomorrow, I need to get my daughter home. Sarah Chen was being loaded into the ambulance, neck brace as precaution despite her protests. Before the doors closed, she caught Miles's eye. Thank you, she mouthed. He nodded. No words necessary. Maya held his hand as they walked back to the truck. She was quiet, processing what she'd witnessed. Miles knew he'd have to explain, to help her understand the complexities of violence and protection, of when it's right to fight. But not tonight. Tonight, she just needed to know she was safe. They drove home in silence, the heater humming against the November cold. Their apartment was on the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse, exposed brick, high ceilings, and Maya's artwork covering every available surface. It was small, but it was theirs. Miles made hot chocolate while Maya changed into her pajamas. When she emerged, clutching her stuffed elephant, he was waiting on the couch. "Come here, Firefly." She curled up next to him, small and warm. "You scared me when you got out of the truck," he said gently. "I know. I'm sorry. But I had to make sure you were okay." "I'm always okay." "Not always, Daddy. You're human." She looked up at him with those wise eyes. "But you're also my hero." Miles felt his throat tighten. "You know why I did that tonight? Because someone needed help." "Yes, but also because one day you'll be out in the world, and I want to know I raised you in a place where people stand up, where they don't walk away." Maya considered this. "Even when it's scary?" "Especially when it's scary." She nodded, satisfied. "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "That lady, will she be okay?" "I think so, baby. I think she will." They sat there until Maya fell asleep, her breathing evening out into the steady rhythm of childhood innocence. Miles carried her to bed, tucked her in with the elephant, and stood in the doorway for a long moment. He thought about the knife, the fear in Sarah's eyes, the casual cruelty of those 3 men. He thought about how easily it could have ended differently, if he'd been 30 seconds later, if Maya hadn't seen, if he'd chosen to keep driving. In the kitchen, he made coffee he wouldn't drink and stared out the window at Detroit's nighttime skyline. Somewhere out there, Sarah Chen was in a hospital being checked, questioned, documented. Somewhere 3 men were nursing wounds and hopefully reconsidering their choices. His phone buzzed. A text from Jenkins. "Heard what went down. You good?" Miles typed back, "Yeah, just another night." But it wasn't. They both knew it. The real consequences, the ones that would ripple out in ways he couldn't predict, would start tomorrow morning, when the police chief knocked on his door. Miles woke to Maya singing in the kitchen, something about fireflies and moonlight, her own invention. Saturday morning sunlight streamed through the industrial windows, and for a moment everything felt normal. Then the knock came. 3 sharp raps, official and purposeful. Miles opened the door and found himself face to face with Chief Marcus Thompson of the Detroit Police Department. He recognized him immediately. Everyone in Detroit did. Thompson was a legend. 40 years on the force. Rose through the ranks despite every obstacle. Reformed entire divisions, and wore his authority like a second skin. "Captain Carter." His voice was deep, measured. "Chief Thompson." Miles extended his hand, confused. "How can I help you?" Thompson shook it, his grip firm. "May I come in?" "Of course." Maya peeked around the corner, curious. Thompson smiled at her, the kind that transformed his stern face into something grandfatherly. "Ah, you must be Maya. I've heard you're quite the student," she beamed. "I'm working on photosynthesis." "That's wonderful." He looked back at Miles. "Could we speak privately?" Miles guided her back to her room with a gentle touch, then led Thompson to the small living room. The chief sat in the worn armchair, taking in the space, the firefighter helmet on the shelf, the photos of Miles and Maya, the order within the modest means. "I'll get straight to it," Thompson began. "Last night you intervened in an assault. 3 perpetrators, 1 victim. You engaged physically, disarmed 1 suspect and neutralized the threat." "Yes, sir. I gave my statement to the responding officers." "I've read it. And I've read the victim's statement from the hospital." Thompson paused, his expression unreadable. "Captain Carter, the woman you saved was my sister. Sarah Chen is my younger sister." The room seemed to tilt slightly. Miles processed this, the weight of it settling. I didn't know." "Of course you didn't. She uses her married name professionally, Chen. I'm Thompson. Different fathers, same mother. It's complicated." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Sarah called me at 3 in the morning from the hospital, told me everything. The assault, the 3 men, the knife, and then she told me about you." Miles waited, unsure where this was going. "She said you could have died, that there were 3 of them. 1 had a blade and you stepped into that alley anyway. She said your daughter saw it all, and that after you saved her, that little girl held her hand and told her she was safe." Thompson's voice cracked slightly, the first sign of emotion breaking through. "I've been a cop for 40 years, Captain. I've seen the worst of humanity, the cruelty, the cowardice, the indifference, and I've also seen the best, though it's rarer than it should be. What you did last night, that was the best. I just did what anyone—" "No." Thompson cut him off gently but firmly. "Not anyone. Most people would have driven past. called 911 maybe, from a safe distance. But you got out of that truck, knowing your daughter was watching, knowing you could die, and you stepped into that darkness anyway. You know why? Miles didn't answer. Because you're a father, and you wanted your daughter to see that some things are worth fighting for. That women deserve protection, respect, dignity. That being a man means standing up, not standing by. Thompson stood, reaching into his jacket. He pulled out something small and metallic, a police commendation medal, the Detroit PD seal engraved on its face. This is the Citizens Medal of Valor. It's usually awarded in ceremonies with press and politicians, but I wanted to give this to you personally, here, in your home. He placed it in Miles's hand. From me. From Sarah. From every woman in this city who's ever walked to her car at night, wondering if tonight's the night someone takes her choice away. Miles looked down at the medal, the weight of it far heavier than the metal itself. There's something else, Thompson continued. Sarah's married to Detective James Chen, homicide. Good man, but he's struggling with what happened, with not being there, with feeling like he failed to protect his wife. He paused. I want you to meet him, both of them. Not today, but soon. I think it would help, all of you. Of course. Thompson moved toward the door, then turned back. Your daughter, Maya, she's watching you every day, learning what it means to be good in a world that doesn't always reward it. You're doing something right, Captain Carter. After he left, Miles stood in the silent apartment, the medal in his palm, trying to process everything. Maya emerged from her room, eyes wide. Was that really the police chief? Yeah, Firefly. Why did he come here? Miles crouched down to her level. Remember the lady from last night? She's his sister. Maya's eyes grew wider. Really? Really? And he wanted to say thank you. Did you get in trouble? No, baby, the opposite. She hugged him suddenly, fiercely. I'm proud of you, Daddy. And there it was, the reason for everything. Not the medal, not the chief's words, but this 7-year-old girl who believed in heroes because she lived with one. Tuesday afternoon, Miles received a text from an unknown number. This is Sarah Chen. Chief Thompson gave me your contact. Would you be willing to meet? James and I would like to thank you properly, no pressure. He stared at the message for a long moment before responding. Of course. When works for you? They arranged to meet Thursday evening at a quiet restaurant in Midtown, the Whitney, a historic mansion turned fine dining establishment. Miles almost declined when he looked it up online and saw the prices, but Sarah insisted it was her treat. Maya stayed with Mrs. Henderson, who'd heard about the incident through the neighborhood grapevine and kept hugging Miles every time she saw him. The Whitney's interior was all Victorian elegance, ornate woodwork, crystal chandeliers, and hushed conversations. Miles felt underdressed in his button-down shirt and slacks, but the hostess greeted him warmly and led him to a private room on the second floor. Sarah Chen stood as he entered. She looked different from that night, composed, professional, her blonde hair styled, wearing a charcoal suit that spoke of courtroom authority. But her eyes held the same vulnerability, the same recognition. Captain Carter. She extended her hand and he shook it gently. Please, call me Miles. Miles. This is my husband, Detective James Chen. James was late 30s, Chinese-American, with the wary eyes of someone who'd seen too much. He stood, and there was a moment of tension, something unspoken passing between them. Detective. Miles nodded. James, please. His handshake was firm, almost too firm. Sit. Please. They settled into the uncomfortable dance of strangers bound by trauma. A waiter brought water, took drink orders, then disappeared with practiced discretion. Sarah spoke first. I don't know how to begin except to say thank you. That feels inadequate, but I don't have better words. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly around her water glass. I'm an assistant district attorney. I prosecute violent crimes. I know the statistics. 70% of sexual assaults go unreported, 90% of perpetrators walk free, and even when victims speak up, the system often fails them. She paused, meeting his eyes. That night I became a statistic. I was walking to my car from a late meeting downtown. 3 men followed me. I didn't even realize until it was too late. They pulled me into that alley and I knew exactly what was going to happen because I've heard hundreds of victims describe it. James flinched, his jaw tightening. And then you appeared, Sarah continued. Not the police, not a security guard, just a man with his daughter who chose to stop, who chose to risk everything. My daughter saw them hurting you, Miles said quietly. I couldn't teach her to walk away from that. James spoke for the first time, his voice rough. I was home, watching a game. My wife was being attacked and I was on the couch drinking a beer. The self-loathing was palpable. I'm a detective. I carry a gun. I'm supposed to protect people, and I couldn't even protect her. James, Sarah reached for his hand, but he pulled away gently. It's true. And then this firefighter, someone who doesn't even carry a weapon, takes on 3 armed men because it was the right thing to do. He looked at Miles with something between admiration and resentment. How do you live with that kind of courage? Miles thought carefully before responding. It wasn't courage, detective, it was desperation. I looked at those men hurting your wife, and I thought about Maya growing up in a world where that's acceptable, where people see and do nothing. That terrified me more than any knife. The waiter returned with drinks, bourbon for James, wine for Sarah, water for Miles. They ordered food none of them would fully eat. The 3 suspects, Sarah said, shifting into professional mode. They've been identified. Darius Webb, Marcus Johnson, and Tyler Mills. Webb had the knife, he's 23, 2 priors for assault. Johnson's 21, 1 count of domestic violence that was dismissed. Mills is 19, no record but known associates with gang affiliations. Are they in custody? Miles asked. Webb and Johnson are. Mills ran and hasn't surfaced yet, but we'll find him. Sarah's courtroom steel showed through. I've recused myself from the case, obviously, but my colleague is pressing forward. With your testimony, the physical evidence, and my statement, we're looking at aggravated assault, attempted sexual assault, and assault with a deadly weapon. Webb's looking at 10-15 years. Good, James said flatly, but Miles saw something else in Sarah's expression. What aren't you saying? She exhaled slowly. Webb's attorney is already building a defense. They're claiming you used excessive force, that you attacked 3 unarmed men. 1 had a knife, Miles interrupted, which you disarmed within seconds, according to the police report. They're going to argue you could have called 911, waited for police, but instead you chose violence. They're going to try to make you the aggressor. Miles felt cold. Are you saying I'm being charged? No. God, no. Sarah leaned forward urgently. The DA won't touch that. You're a hero. But in Webb's trial, they're going to try to discredit you. Make the jury sympathetic to him. It's a common tactic. Let them try, Miles said quietly. I'd do it again. James studied him with new respect. You really would, wouldn't you? Every single time. The food arrived. Steaks and sides that tasted like cardboard in their mouths. They talked about other things. Maya's school, James's cases, Sarah's upcoming trial calendar. The conversation gradually relaxed, finding rhythm in shared humanity. As dinner wound down, Sarah pulled an envelope from her purse. I know this feels transactional, and it's not meant to be. But James and I want to contribute to Maya's education fund, college, whatever she needs. Miles started to refuse, but she raised her hand. Please, let us do this. Not as payment. You can't pay for what you did, but as investment. In Maya, in the kind of person she's going to become with you as her father. He took the envelope, knowing arguing would diminish her need to give. Inside was a check for $25,000. That's too much. It's not nearly enough, James said. And there's something else. He pulled out a business card. I coach youth basketball at the community center on Saturdays, mostly boys from rough neighborhoods who need positive role models. I could use help, if you're interested. Miles took the card, understanding the real offer. Not charity, but partnership, connection, a way forward that honored what happened without being trapped by it. I'd like that. They stood, and this time when Sarah hugged him, it wasn't awkward. It was real. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me, for acting, for being the kind of man who makes the world a little less dark. Outside, the November air was crisp, Detroit's lights spreading out like fallen stars. Miles drove home, thinking about courage and fear, about how they weren't opposites but companions. Maya was still awake when he arrived, supposedly reading but clearly waiting. How was dinner, Daddy? Good, Firefly. Really good. Did they say thank you? They did. Are they nice? Miles smiled. Yeah, they're very nice. Good. She yawned, satisfied. Heroes should have friends. The story broke on Wednesday morning. Miles was at the station conducting equipment checks when Jenkins ran in waving his phone. Cap, you gotta see this. The Detroit Free Press website had the headline in bold, "Local firefighter saves prosecutor from assault. Police chief's sister credits captain's bravery." Below was a photo, not from that night, but from last year's Medal of Valor ceremony, where Miles had received an award for saving 2 children from a house fire. He looked professional, heroic, exactly the kind of image newspapers loved. The article detailed everything: the assault, the 3 suspects, Miles's intervention, even quoted Sarah Chen extensively. It mentioned Maya, the captain's 7-year-old daughter, who witnessed her father's courage firsthand. Miles felt his stomach drop. They used Maya's name. "It gets worse," Jenkins said, scrolling, "or better, depending on how you look at it. Check Twitter." Detroit Hero was trending. Thousands of tweets, most positive, some sharing the article, others posting old photos of Miles at community events. Someone had dug up his service record: 20 years with DFD, multiple commendations, 0 disciplinary actions. But there were also the other tweets, the ones that made his blood run cold. 3 black men beaten by black cop-adjacent firefighter. Where's the outrage? So violence is okay when a hero does it? Interesting. Captain Carter used excessive force. Those men had families too. Miles set down his phone, suddenly exhausted. Captain Reynolds, the shift commander, appeared in his office doorway. "Carter, my office. Now." The walk felt like miles. Reynolds was old school, gruff but fair. He closed the door and gestured to a chair. "You know what's happening out there?" "Yes, sir." Fire commissioner called. Mayor's office called. Hell, even the governor's people reached out. "Everyone wants to talk to the hero firefighter." Reynolds leaned back. "How you feeling about all this?" "Honestly, I hate it. I just want to do my job." "I know, but that's not an option right now." He pulled out a folder. "Public Affairs wants you to do a press conference. Controlled messaging, get ahead of any negative narratives. Show you're not some vigilante but a concerned father and public servant." "No." "Miles." "No, sir. With respect, I'm not parading my daughter in front of cameras so people can feel good about themselves. We did what anyone should have done. End of story." Reynolds studied him. "You realize the alternative is letting the narrative get away from you. Those 3 suspects, they've got people defending them. Social media's a mess. Some folks are making this about race, about police brutality by proxy. I'm not a cop, but you tackled 3 young black men. In this climate, that matters." Miles felt anger rising. They were attacking a woman. Their race didn't matter. Her race didn't matter. Violence mattered. Stopping it mattered. "I agree with you completely, but we don't control how people interpret this." Reynolds softened. "Look, I'm not ordering you to do anything. You're off duty until Monday anyway. Protocol after a physical altercation. Take the time. Think about it. But understand, silence can be interpreted as guilt." Miles left the office, grabbed his gear, and drove home in a fog. Detroit passed by in familiar patterns. The renovated downtown bleeding into neglected neighborhoods, hope and despair existing on the same street corners. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. News requests, interview offers, strangers on social media trying to friend him. He turned it off. At home, Maya was at the kitchen table doing homework. Mrs. Henderson was there. She'd picked Maya up from school, and her expression was worried. "Some reporters showed up at the school," she said quietly, "asking about Maya, about you. The principal sent them away, but..." Miles felt rage, hot and pure. "They approached my daughter." "No, they didn't get that close, but other parents talked," word spreading. He thanked Mrs. Henderson, paid her extra again, and after she left, sat down next to Maya. "How was school, Firefly?" "Weird." She didn't look up from her math worksheet. "Kids kept asking me stuff about that night, about the lady. Jasmine said her mom saw you on TV. I wasn't on TV. But you're famous now?" "No, baby. I'm the same person I was last week." She finally looked at him, those wise eyes seeing through everything. "Are people being mean to you?" "Some people don't understand why I did what I did." "That's dumb." "You saved her." "I know. So they're just dumb." Miles laughed despite everything. "Yeah, Firefly. They're just dumb." That evening, after Maya fell asleep, Miles sat at his laptop and read everything. The articles, the tweets, the comment sections. The supporters far outweighed the critics, but the critics were loud, organized, and vicious. One comment stuck with him. "Carter thinks he's Batman. But in the real world, vigilantes create more violence than they prevent." He thought about responding, defending himself. But what would he say? That he'd seen a woman being attacked, and his humanity demanded action? That seemed so obvious it shouldn't need explanation. His phone, still off, showed 47 missed calls when he checked. Among them, 3 news stations, Detroit Free Press, and one from a New York number with a 212 area code. He called it back, expecting a reporter. "Captain Carter," the voice was female, professional, warm. "My name is Dr. Angela Morrison. I'm a professor of criminal justice at Columbia University. I study bystander intervention and community response to violence." "Okay. I read about what you did, and I'd like to talk with you. Not for media, but for research. Your case is remarkable. A bystander who intervened against multiple attackers, succeeded in stopping the assault, and faced minimal injury. That's statistically very rare." "I didn't think about statistics, I just acted." "Exactly. That's what I want to understand. What makes someone act when most people freeze?" She paused. "Would you be willing to speak with me? Anonymous, if you prefer. No publication without your consent." Miles surprised himself by saying yes. They talked for 90 minutes. Dr. Morrison asked about his training, his childhood, his relationship with Maya, his understanding of risk. She asked about the moment he decided to get out of the truck, the feeling when he engaged the 3 men. "Did you think you might die?" she asked. "Yes. But you still acted." "Yes." "Why?" Miles was quiet for a long moment. "Because my daughter was watching. And I needed her to see that when faced with evil, real, immediate evil, we don't look away. We act, even if it costs us everything." Dr. Morrison was silent on the other end. Finally, "Captain Carter, you're describing what philosophers call moral courage. It's different from physical courage. It's acting in accordance with your values even when the cost is unbearable. I just call it being a dad." She laughed softly. Maybe that's what being a dad should mean. After they hung up, Miles sat in the dark apartment, city lights painting shadows on the walls. Tomorrow he'd face more questions, more scrutiny, more people trying to make his actions fit their narratives. But tonight, he knew something true. He'd raised Maya in a world where people stood up, where they didn't walk away. And that was worth any spotlight, any criticism, any cost. The backlash started small, then snowballed. A Detroit activist group called Justice Now held a press conference outside police headquarters. Their leader, Marcus Williams, a man Miles vaguely recognized from community forums, stood at a podium covered in microphones. "We demand accountability for Captain Miles Carter's actions. 3 young black men were brutally beaten by someone who took the law into his own hands. This is vigilante justice dressed up as heroism." Miles watched the clip on his laptop, Maya at school, his coffee growing cold. The video continued. "Sarah Chen is a prosecutor, part of a system that incarcerates our community at disproportionate rates. We're not defending assault, but we're questioning why Carter didn't simply call police. Why did he immediately resort to violence?" The comment section exploded. Arguments between defenders and critics grew vicious. Someone posted Miles's home address. Another shared Maya's school name. Miles called the school principal immediately. "Mr. Carter, I was just about to call you," Principal Davis said. "We've increased security, no unauthorized persons allowed on campus. Maya's teacher has been briefed to keep her inside during recess, until this settles." "Thank you. For what it's worth, I think you're a hero. So do most of the parents." "Most. Not all." Jenkins called that afternoon. "Cap, you need to see what's happening at the station." Miles drove over, despite Reynolds' order to stay away. Outside Station 19, protesters had gathered, maybe 30 people with signs. "Firefighters fight fires, not people. Justice for Darius, Marcus, Tyler. No more vigilantes." But across the street, a larger group had formed with different signs. "Thank you, Captain Carter. Heroes stop violence. We stand with Miles." The 2 groups shouted at each other, separated by police officers forming a human barrier. It felt surreal, nightmarish. Jenkins met him at the side entrance. "It's been like this since noon. Media everywhere. Reynolds is losing his mind." Inside, the station felt tense. Firefighters clustered in groups, some watching the news on the apparatus floor TV, others avoiding it entirely. "Carter," Reynolds emerged from his office, "I told you to stay home. This is my station, my crew. Not today, it isn't. Today it's a 3-ring circus, and you're the main act." He pulled Miles into his office, closed the door. "The commissioner wants you on administrative leave. Paid, but you're done until this settles." "For what? I haven't been charged with anything." "For your safety And the department's reputation. Those protesters, some of them are violent. We've had threats. Bomb threats against the station, death threats against you. One lunatic said he'd hurt Maya if you didn't apologize. Miles felt ice in his veins. Someone threatened my daughter. Detroit PD is on it. They're watching your apartment, her school. But Miles, this is bigger than one incident now. It's become symbolic. You represent something to both sides, and neither one is going to let go easily. So what, I just hide? You protect your family. That's always been your priority, right? Well, the best protection right now is distance. Let this blow over. Miles wanted to argue, but Reynolds was right. Maya's safety trumped everything. That evening, he picked her up from school with a police escort. Detective Chen had insisted, personally arranged it. Maya noticed, of course. "Daddy, why is there a police car following us?" "Just being extra careful, Firefly." At home, he explained as much as she could understand. "Some people are upset about what I did. They don't think I should have helped that lady. But you saved her." "I know, but people see things differently. Are we in danger?" He wanted to lie, to shield her, but she deserved truth. "I don't think so. But we're being careful just in case." Maya processed this with the seriousness of a child who'd already seen too much adult complexity. "I'm not scared. You'll protect us." That faith, absolute and unquestioning, was both a blessing and a burden. That night, after Maya slept, Miles received a call from an unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. "Captain Carter?" The voice was young, male, hesitant. "Who is this?" "My name's Tyler. Tyler Mills, the third attacker. The one who ran." Miles's grip tightened on the phone. "How did you get this number?" "Doesn't matter, I need to say something." A pause, breathing. "What we did to that lady, it wasn't right. I know that now. Darius, he was hyped up on something, talking big, and Marcus always follows him. I got caught up in it, but that doesn't excuse anything." "No, it doesn't. I want to turn myself in, but I'm scared. Scared of prison, scared of what'll happen to my mom. She's sick. I'm all she's got." Miles wanted to feel sympathy, but couldn't quite reach it. "You should be scared. What you did to Sarah Chen, what you tried to do, you took everything from her. Her safety, her peace, her sense of being human. That deserves consequences." "I know." Tyler's voice cracked. "But I'm calling because I saw you with your little girl. The way she looked at you, trusted you. My dad left when I was 6. I never had that. Never had anyone show me what being a man actually means. Being a man means taking responsibility for your actions. I'm trying, that's why I'm calling. I'm going to turn myself in tomorrow." Detective Chen said if I cooperate, testify against Darius and Marcus, I might get a reduced sentence. "That's between you and your conscience." "Yeah." A long pause. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you stopped us. I'm glad someone finally did, because we needed stopping." The line went dead. Miles sat in the dark, processing. Tyler Mills was 19, barely an adult, making catastrophic choices that would define his life. Part of Miles felt pity. Most of him felt anger that it took nearly destroying someone for this kid to find clarity. The next morning, Tyler Mills walked into Detroit Police Headquarters with his mother and turned himself in. The news covered it extensively. At his arraignment, he pled guilty to assault, agreed to testify, and faced 5 out of 7 years. The protests continued, but with less intensity. The narrative was shifting. Tyler's surrender complicated the 3 innocent young men storyline. Public opinion swung further in Miles's favor, but Marcus Williams and Justice Now doubled down. They organized a march on City Hall, demanding an investigation into Miles's excessive force. News vans followed, hoping for confrontation. Miles watched from his apartment, Maya beside him doing homework, as his city tore itself apart over whether saving a woman from assault was justified. "Daddy," Maya said suddenly, "when I grow up, I want to be like you." He looked at her, his heart breaking and healing simultaneously. "You already are, Firefly. You already are." The trial of Darius Webb and Marcus Johnson began 3 weeks later, in late November. Sarah Chen sat in the gallery despite her attorney's advice. She needed to see it through. James sat beside her, and Miles was there too, waiting to testify. The courtroom was packed. Media, activists from both sides, curious citizens drawn by the spectacle. Judge Patricia Williams, a stern black woman in her 60s, ran a tight courtroom. Darius Webb's attorney, Marcus Butler, was a familiar face in Detroit criminal defense, sharp, aggressive, willing to push boundaries. He wore expensive suits and practiced charm, the kind that worked on juries looking for any excuse to acquit. In his opening statement, Butler painted a picture. 3 young men, products of Detroit's failed systems, poverty, broken schools, absent fathers. They made mistakes, but Captain Miles Carter didn't respond like a good Samaritan. He responded like a weapon. Miles watched from the gallery, jaw tight, as Butler described him as a vigilante who immediately resorted to brutal violence against 3 unarmed men. Darius Webb had a knife, the prosecutor, ADA Jennifer Morrison, shot back in her opening, which Captain Carter disarmed before it could be used to threaten or kill Ms. Chen. This isn't about 3 disadvantaged young men. This is about 3 predators who chose to attack a defenseless woman and met someone who wouldn't let them. The first day featured police testimony, the responding officers, crime scene photos. The knife entered as evidence. Miles noticed several jurors flinch at the images of the alley, the torn clothing, the clear signs of struggle. Day 2 was Sarah's testimony. She took the stand in a navy suit projecting strength, but Miles saw her hands shake when she raised them to swear in. Ada Morrison led her through the events gently but thoroughly. "Ms. Chen, can you describe what happened after the 3 defendants pulled you into the alley?" Sarah's voice was steady. "They pushed me against the wall. Darius Webb told me to shut up or he'd cut me. Marcus Johnson held my arms. Tyler Mills was laughing like this was all a game. What were you thinking? That I was going to die? Or wish I had?" She paused. "I've prosecuted hundreds of sexual assault cases. I knew exactly what was happening, what they intended, and I knew statistically I probably wouldn't survive to testify. What changed? Captain Miles Carter changed it. I heard a voice, commanding, clear, telling them to let me go. Then everything happened so fast. Fighting, men hitting the ground, and then he was there asking my name, telling me I was safe." Butler's cross-examination was brutal. "Ms. Chen, you were disoriented, traumatized, correct?" "Yes." "Is it possible you misinterpreted my client's intentions?" "No." "But you admitted being disoriented. How can you be certain?" "Because there's no misinterpreting 3 men holding me down and tearing my clothes." The gallery murmured approval. Judge Williams banged her gavel. Butler continued, undeterred. "Captain Carter, by your own admission, immediately engaged in physical violence. He didn't call for help, didn't identify himself, he just attacked. Isn't it possible his aggression escalated the situation?" "No. His intervention ended it." "But you can't know that. Perhaps if he'd called police—" "I'd be dead," Sarah said flatly. "Or wishing I was." Day 3, Miles took the stand. He'd worn his dress uniform, navy blue with medals, the DFD patch prominent. He looked exactly like what he was, a public servant, a professional, someone who ran toward danger. Ada Morrison walked him through his background, his training, his commendations. She established credibility before getting to that night. "Captain Carter, when you saw the assault in progress, what went through your mind?" "That someone needed help, and I had seconds to act." "Why didn't you call police and wait?" "Because in the time it takes police to arrive, Ms. Chen would have been raped or killed, or both." "Did you intend to hurt the defendants?" "I intended to stop them. Hurting them was a byproduct of that goal." Butler's cross-examination was aggressive from the start. "Captain Carter, you're a large man, 6 feet, 190 pounds of trained muscle. My client is 5'10", 165 pounds. You significantly outmatched him. I didn't know his weight when I intervened. I knew he had a knife, which you disarmed in seconds. Then you continued beating him. Why?" "I didn't beat anyone. I neutralized 3 threats using appropriate force." "Appropriate." Butler pulled up crime scene photos of Darius Webb's injuries, a broken jaw, fractured ribs, severe bruising. "This is appropriate?" Miles met his eyes. "He was attacking a woman with a knife. Yes, that level of force was appropriate. You enjoy violence, don't you, Captain?" "Objection." Morrison was on her feet. "Sustained. Counselor, be careful." But Butler pressed on. "Isn't it true you fought in school? Multiple disciplinary reports for violence?" Miles felt his jaw tighten. "When I was 14, I defended smaller kids from bullies. I was suspended twice. I'm not proud of it, but I'd do it again." "So, you have a pattern of vigilante behavior." "I have a pattern of helping people who can't help themselves." The courtroom erupted. Judge Williams called for order. Butler switched tactics. "Your daughter witnessed this violence. What kind of father exposes a 7-year-old to that? Miles felt rage, white-hot and barely controlled. The kind of father who wants her to know that when women are being hurt, we don't look away. We act. Even if it traumatizes her. The only trauma my daughter experienced was seeing men hurt someone and wondering if anyone would care enough to stop them. I taught her that someone will. That's not trauma. That's hope. The gallery erupted in applause. Judge Williams banged her gavel repeatedly, but she was smiling slightly. The trial continued for 2 more days. Expert testimony on the injuries, character witnesses for both sides, closing arguments that painted vastly different pictures of the same night. Ada Morrison's closing was precise. This case is simple. 3 men attacked a woman. Another man stopped them. The defense wants you to believe Captain Carter was the villain. But ask yourselves, if you were Sarah Chen that night, who would you want coming around that corner? Butler's closing appealed to sympathy. These young men made mistakes, but they're human beings, products of a system that failed them. Darius Webb grew up in poverty, no father, a mother working 3 jobs. He made a terrible choice, but Captain Carter's response was disproportionate, violent, and wrong. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Darius Webb would serve 12 to 15 years. Marcus Johnson got 8 to 10. Tyler Mills, having cooperated, received 5 years with possibility of parole in 3. Outside the courthouse, Sarah Chen gave a brief statement to the press. Justice was served today. Not just for me, but for every woman who's ever been told she deserved what happened, that she should have been more careful, that violence against her doesn't matter. Captain Miles Carter reminded this city that some people still believe women's lives have value. I will spend the rest of my life grateful. Miles didn't speak to reporters. He simply walked to his truck, where Maya waited with Mrs. Henderson, and drove home. That night, the 3 men who'd spent weeks vilifying him, Marcus Williams and the Justice Now activists, issued a statement. While we still question the immediate use of violence, we acknowledge the jury's verdict and accept that Captain Carter acted to prevent a serious crime. We encourage continued dialogue about bystander intervention and community safety. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. December brought snow to Detroit, heavy, wet flakes that blanketed the city in temporary peace. Station 19 went back to normal mostly. Miles returned to his shifts, and though people still recognized him, the fervor had faded. But something had changed, irrevocably. On a Saturday morning, Miles and Maya drove to the East Side Community Center, where Detective James Chen coached basketball. James had called repeatedly, insisting Miles follow through on his offer to help. The gym smelled like old wood and sweat, echoing with the sounds of squeaking sneakers and bouncing balls. 20 kids, ages 10-16, ran drills with varying degrees of coordination. James blew his whistle. Listen up. This is Captain Miles Carter from Detroit Fire. He's volunteering to help coach. Show him respect. The kids stared, some recognizing him from news coverage. One boy, maybe 13, raised his hand. You the guy who beat up those dudes? Jamal, James barked. That's not... It's okay, Miles said. He looked at the kid. I stopped them from hurting someone. There's a difference. But you had to fight. I did. And I hope I never have to again. Fighting should always be the last option when someone's life is at stake. Another kid spoke up. My dad said you're a hero. I'm a firefighter and a dad. That's all. They practiced for 2 hours. Miles worked with the younger kids on fundamentals. Dribbling, passing, teamwork. Maya sat on the bleachers doing homework, occasionally glancing up to watch her father interact with kids who reminded him of his younger self. During a water break, a boy approached Miles shyly. Captain Carter? I'm Tyler's cousin, Tyler Mills. Miles stiffened slightly. Okay. He wrote me from jail, said to tell you he's sorry for everything, and that he's working on his GED, trying to be better. Miles studied this kid, 15 maybe, with Tyler's eyes, but not his mistakes yet. You stay out of trouble, don't follow his path. I won't, my mom makes sure of that. He paused. Can I ask you something? Sure. When you saw those guys hurting that lady, were you scared? Terrified. But you did it anyway. Being scared doesn't mean you don't act. It means you act despite the fear. That's the only kind of courage that matters. The boy nodded, processing, then ran back to his team. After practice, James pulled Miles aside. Sarah and I want you and Maya over for dinner tomorrow. Nothing formal, just we'd like to be friends, real friends, not just people connected by trauma. We'd like that. That evening, Miles took Maya to Belle Isle, the island park in the Detroit River. The snow had stopped, leaving everything crystalline and beautiful. They walked along the frozen shore, their breath visible in the cold air. "Daddy, why did those men hurt that lady?" Miles had been expecting this question, dreading it, but it was time. Because they made bad choices. They didn't respect her as a person. They saw her as something to take from, not someone to protect. But why? What makes someone like that? Lots of things. Anger, pain, being taught wrong things about how to treat people. Sometimes people hurt others because they've been hurt themselves. But that's never an excuse. Will they get better? I don't know, Firefly, I hope so. Tyler, the youngest one, he's trying. The others, I honestly don't know. They sat on a bench overlooking the frozen river, city lights reflecting off ice and snow. "I've been thinking," Maya said slowly, "about that night. I was scared when you got out of the truck. I know. But I was also proud. Because you didn't think about yourself. You thought about her. About making things right." She looked up at him with those wise eyes. "That's what heroes do, right? They help even when it's hard? That's what good people do, baby. You don't need a uniform or a medal. You just need to care about others more than your own comfort. I want to be like that. You already are." The next morning brought news. Marcus Williams and Justice Now had started a new initiative, training community members in bystander intervention techniques. The press release quoted Williams. "Captain Carter's actions, while controversial in method, highlighted a crucial need: everyday citizens knowing how to safely intervene in emergencies. We're partnering with DFD and Detroit PD to create workshops." Miles received a call asking if he'd participate. He agreed. Dinner at the Chen's was warm, comfortable. Sarah cooked Chinese dishes from her grandmother's recipes, while James grilled steaks. Maya and their daughter Emma, 10 years old with Sarah's blonde hair and James's dry wit, became instant friends. Over wine, water for Miles, always on call mentally, they talked about life beyond that night. Sarah's upcoming cases, James's basketball team, Maya's science project on renewable energy. "She's going to be the one to solve climate change," James joked. "I'm just going to try," Maya said seriously. After dinner, while the girls played upstairs, the adults sat in the living room. Sarah finally addressed it. "I've been in therapy, twice a week, processing everything." "How's it going?" Miles asked gently. "Some days better than others. I still can't walk to my car alone at night. Still check behind me constantly. Still flinch when men stand too close." She paused. "But I'm here. I'm alive. Because of you. You'd have survived anyway. You're strong. Maybe. But I wouldn't have survived whole. There's a difference between existing and living." She met his eyes. "You gave me back my life. Not just my survival. My life. The ability to feel safe, to trust, to believe the world has more good than evil." James added, "We've talked about this a lot. About how random it was. You happening to drive by. Maya happening to see. How easily it could have ended differently." "It wasn't random," Miles said. "I genuinely believe we're put in places for reasons. Maybe not cosmic reasons, but human ones. That night I was supposed to be there. And Maya?" Miles thought about this carefully. She needed to see that heroes are real. Not in movies or comic books, but in everyday choices. She needed to know her father would do the right thing even when it cost him everything. "Did it?" Sarah asked. "Cost you everything?" "Almost. My reputation, my peace, my daughter's safety, all of it was at risk. But I'd do it again every time." They sat in comfortable silence, 3 people bound by a moment that could have destroyed them, but instead revealed who they truly were. 3 months later, February, the bystander intervention workshop was packed, 200 people in the community center auditorium. Miles stood backstage with Marcus Williams, an unlikely partnership that had grown into mutual respect. "Nervous?" Marcus asked. "Always." "Good. Means you care." They took the stage together. Miles spoke first. 3 months ago, I was driving home with my daughter when we witnessed a violent assault. I made a choice to intervene. That choice has been debated, praised, criticized, and analyzed to death. But here's what I want you to know. I'm not special. I'm not some action hero. I'm a firefighter and a father who saw someone in danger and couldn't look away. He paused, scanning the audience. But I was also lucky. Lucky I had training. Lucky I was physically capable. Lucky it ended without me or my daughter getting seriously hurt. Most bystanders don't have those advantages. That's why we're here, to teach you how to intervene safely, when to act, when to call for help, and how to be the person who makes a difference without becoming another victim. Marcus Williams took over, outlining strategies, showing videos, facilitating discussions. The audience was engaged, asking questions, sharing their own experiences of witnessing violence and feeling helpless. During the break, a young woman approached Miles. "Captain Carter, I was assaulted 2 years ago. No one helped. Everyone just walked by. I want you to know that what you did, it matters. Not just to Ms. Chen, but to all of us who've been invisible." Miles felt his throat tighten. "I'm sorry no one was there for you, but now there will be, because you're teaching them." That evening, Miles picked up Maya from Sarah and James's house. She'd been having a play date with Emma. The two girls had become inseparable, their friendship a silver lining in everything. As they drove home, Maya said, "Emma's mom told me something today." "What's that?" "She said that before that night she used to think the world was mostly bad people with a few good ones mixed in, but now she thinks it's mostly good people who just need reminders to act." "She said you reminded her." Miles felt tears sting his eyes. "Emma's mom is very kind." "No, Daddy, she's right. You showed everyone that heroes are just regular people who care. That's better than any superhero." At home, Miles tucked Maya into bed, her room covered in glow-in-the-dark stars and science posters. "Daddy?" "Yeah, Firefly. When I grow up, I'm going to be a doctor, so I can help people like you do." "That's wonderful. But I'm also going to teach my kids what you taught me." "What's that?" "That when someone needs help, you don't walk away, no matter what. Because that's what makes us human." Miles kissed her forehead, turned off the light, and stood in the doorway watching her sleep. This 7-year-old who'd witnessed violence and somehow emerged with more faith in humanity, not less. Downstairs, his phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. "The three of us are starting a foundation, the Second Chance Initiative, helping young men like Tyler, Marcus, and Darius get education, counseling, job training. Want to be on the board?" Miles typed back, "Yes, absolutely yes." Another text, this time from James. "Next Saturday, we're taking the girls to the Pistons game. You in?" "Wouldn't miss it." He stood at the window, looking out at Detroit, his city, broken and beautiful, struggling and surviving. The lights spread out like possibilities, each one a life, a story, a chance to be better. Somewhere out there, 3 men sat in prison, hopefully learning what it meant to respect women, to value life beyond their own desires. Somewhere, Sarah Chen was sleeping without nightmares for the first time in months. Somewhere, young people were learning they had the power to intervene, to protect, to stand up. And here, in this modest apartment with exposed brick and second-hand furniture, a 7-year-old girl slept soundly, knowing her father was a hero not because he wore a uniform, but because he chose kindness over comfort, action over silence, courage over fear. Miles poured himself water, the cold liquid grounding him in the present. The medal from Chief Thompson sat on the shelf next to his fire helmet. He rarely looked at it, didn't need to. The real prize was sleeping upstairs, dreaming of the future. His phone buzzed one more time. An unknown number. He almost ignored it, then answered. "Captain Carter, this is Darius Webb." Miles's hand tightened on the phone. "How are you calling me?" "Weekly phone privileges. Listen, I don't have long. I just wanted to say..." A pause, heavy breathing. "I've been in therapy. Court-ordered at first, but now I go because I want to. And I'm realizing what I almost did to that lady. It destroys me every day." Miles was silent. "You had every right to kill me that night. I would have if roles were reversed, but you didn't. You stopped us without killing us. And that gave me a chance to maybe become something better than what I was. Are you asking for forgiveness?" "No, I don't deserve that. I'm just telling you that your daughter, she was right. Heroes don't give up on people, even when people give up on themselves. You could have beaten us to death. Instead, you gave us a future where we could learn. So, thank you for the mercy neither I, Marcus, or Tyler deserved." The line went dead. Miles stood there, phone in hand, processing. He thought about mercy and justice, about how they weren't opposites but partners, about how stopping violence sometimes meant using it, but always meant knowing when enough was enough. He thought about Maya's words. Heroes are just regular people who care. Outside, snow began to fall again, gentle and persistent. Detroit slept under a blanket of white, and for one quiet moment, everything felt possible. Redemption, healing, change. Miles Carter, firefighter and father, turned off the lights and walked upstairs to check on his daughter one more time. She was still sleeping, still safe, still believing in a world where good people existed. And tomorrow he'd wake up and prove her right again.